Hello, and thank you for watching this presentation by the American Ayres Society. Please support the organization by becoming a member. Go to irises.org and click on Join. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. As everybody knows, we were supposed to have the convention in 2021, but due to COVID, uh, we weren't able to have it, and it's postponed till 2022. So this is like what you would see at an Iris convention where you preview next year's convention. I'll just give you a little bit of background of how this is going to go. So it's mostly a series of videos. So at the beginning, uh, Scarlett's going to talk a little bit about Las Cruces, and there's a video of what to see and do in Las Cruces. And then we're going to have 6 videos of the 6 gardens. So before each video, I'm going to say a little bit something about how we uh, picked those gardens, and Scarlett's going to talk a little bit about how the gardens were prepared for the convention, and then we'll go right into the video. And then the videos run about 5 to 7 minutes for each garden. And it, like Gary says at the end of the video, if anybody has any question regarding that garden, we'll be happy to answer them, and then we'll go on to the next one. And then at the end, we'll look at any other questions. So, Scarlett.
Hi, yes, my name is Scarlet Ayres. I'm co-chair for the convention. I also have one of the display gardens. The convention hotel is the Hotel Encanto de las Cruces. And some of you may remember that who attended the Aero Trek in 2018. It's the nice Spanish themed hotel it's probably one of the nicest ones in the city. It's also central to a lot of restaurants. There's a grocery store about a block away, a Starbucks. I know some of you guys are Starbucks fans. That's about a block away, and it's right across from the Messiah Ali Mall. Next slide. Next slide, Howie. And it also has a nice swimming pool, and with I'm sure lots of pretty girls. And it's a great place to have the convention. Unfortunately, last year when we were planning this, the hotel had a shuttle that could take people to various restaurants and like to Old Mesilla. But unfortunately, because of COVID-19, they canceled the shuttle, and we understand there'll be no shuttles. But as I said, it's central to a lot of nearby restaurants, and we do have Uber in Las Cruces. Next slide, Howie. As I said, it's a nice Spanish themed restaurant. There's a nice little restaurant inside with a lot of Mexican food, Gardinos, and Howie and I have eaten there. It is pretty good food. It also has a nice gift shop. Next slide.
So before we go to the video about what to do in Las Cruces, the hotel, the parking will be free. So for those of you that are driving or renting a car from El Paso, there's no charge to park in the parking lot. There will be a shuttle that runs from the airport to Las Cruces. The Hotel Encanto is one of the stops on the shuttle. It runs every hour from the El Paso airport, and we're making arrangements through the Las Cruces Convention and Visitors uh, Bureau to get a reduced rate, and hopefully we'll be able to have people make reservations when they know their flights.
Yeah, and this little video about to show talks about things to do in Las Cruces and the surrounding area. Las Cruces is a city of about, I don't know, a little over 100,000 people, so it's not that big of a city, and driving's pretty nice. Howie?
Okay. Oops. I don't know where the video don't want to go now. All right.
The Dripping Springs Natural Area has over 4 miles of hiking trails. There is a small waterfall and the remains of a dude ranch. Since 1848, Old Mesilla has had a major influence on Mesilla Valley, from the Gadsden Purchase, signed in Old Mesilla, to the Civil War, to the Butterfield Stagecoach Trail, to the trial of Billy the Kid. Mesilla has been a prominent part of the rich history of the Southwest. Many unique shops and restaurants line the plaza. Over the Oregon Mountains is the White Sands Missile Range. You can drive to the entrance gate and park your car. The Missile Park is a 5-minute easy walk from the gate and displays a variety of missiles and rockets tested at White Sands. There is also a museum, and you can see the role the range played in the detonation of the first ever atomic bomb. The Farmers Market is open Saturday morning and takes over about a mile of Main Street. It has been listed as one of the best in the country, with homegrown produce and locally produced crafts. The Soledad Canyon Day Use Area has scenic hikes in the western foothills of the Oregon Mountains with views of the Mesilla Valley. It is at the junction of two canyons, Bar Canyon and Soledad Canyon. Part Art Gallery, part Natural History Museum, the Zool Museum at New Mexico State University contains over 1,800 beautiful specimens of petrified wood, fossils, and minerals. The Museum of Nature and Science has 3 primary permanent exhibits: desert life, light and space, and Permian trackways. Within a 2-hour drive of Cruces is many interesting sites, including Three Rivers petroglyphs with over 20,000 petroglyphs, the White Sands National Monument, the Valley of Fires Recreational Area, which is one of the newest lava flows in the continental U.S., and Spaceport America, which will launch tourism in space, maybe next year.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the gardens now. So before we decided to have a convention in Las Cruces, we needed a place for the master planting. And it was about the time that we were asked if we would host a convention here that Blue Jay Ayres was moving from Nebraska to Vado, New Mexico. And we asked Sherry, who's the daughter of the Jedlicka family, to if she would consider being the master garden, and she said yes. And from that, we were able to host the convention. So that's our first garden that we're going to visit. We're going to visit 2 gardens on Thursday, April 14th. Blue Jay will be one of them. There's 5,500 irises of Blue Jay and 700 convention irises in this garden.
Yes,
Scarlett?
Sherry purchased this land about 4 or 5 years ago, and we think it was an alfalfa farm before she purchased it. But she's turned it into basically an iris farm. She grows the irises on raised row with using drip irrigation, and she fertilizes twice a year, and there's thousands of them. Howie?
Okay. Today, we're at Blue Jay Garden, Blue Jay Ayres in Vado, New Mexico. Blue Jay is the 2022 AIS National Convention Master Garden Planting. I'm with Sherry Arevalo of Blue Jay Ayres. Sherry, would you like to tell us about Blue Jay Ayres, a little bit about the history?
Sure. Well, it started a long time ago when I was off in college. I came back home and my parents had a bunch of iris all of a sudden. They used to have tree nursery and it turned into iris. And they had gotten a bunch of iris from Wanda Rezak, which is why they did name a flower after her. And so she was the person that kind of got them started down in Nebraska. And my dad just had a lot of fun growing them, and hybridizing is what he wanted to do. He was hybridizing the iris. And he did end up kind of specializing with some pom-pom iris that came out from those crosses, and I hope to continue that someday. I did bring as many of his seedlings that I could, but basically we moved the farm from Nebraska then over here to Vado, New Mexico, and we are growing as much as we can. We've got so we started with about 4,000, but I've added about 1,500 more new iris varieties, and and we're hoping to put on quite a show for next year.
So, what prompted you to move the Iris Garden from Nebraska to New Mexico?
Well, I had moved in the meantime, and I was going back in the summers to continue working with the Iris. But my dad had a spell where there wasn't any flowers for 3 years, so it was kind of hard to be a hybridizer with no flowers. Nebraska has a lot of hail and frost, and so that kind of knocked him off the wagon, and it was time to retire basically after that. So that's how he stopped hybridizing. But then I went ahead and then moved all the Iris with me over here in New Mexico.
So, when you came here in New Mexico, how did you find the Mesilla Valley Iris Society?
Actually, they found me. they had ordered some iris from me, and I decided that since it was actually in the middle of when I was still moving some iris down, and so I said, well, I'm going to be coming down. I was still kind of halfway between New Mexico and Nebraska, and I says, well, I'll deliver them to you personally, and I ended up in one of their Iris Society meetings delivering the iris, and so that's how I got to know everybody, and I really enjoyed. I hadn't really been in iris clubs before that. So I really enjoyed getting to know what all the club can do. It was great to see how they bring so many new iris to the community and really get that introduced to people.
And you say you have 5,500 irises. Are they all in your catalog?
Oh, not yet. They're going to you're going to start to see hundreds of new iris per year in the next few years, because they're just getting to be where they're getting ready to get sold now, the new ones.
What kind of varieties of iris do you sell?
Tall bearded mostly. I do have a few IBs and STBs. I had heard previously that people thought that in this hot of a climate STBs don't grow, but they seem to grow fine. ABs of course grow really well in this area, and but mostly bearded, and of course mostly tall bearded, but a few of the smallers. And I do have quite an AB collection. I actually am growing quite fond of the arrowbreds.
And of course, as you know, arrowbreds do grow really well here. Some very well-known hybridizers, long before I hybridized, that worked in this area. So, the convention garden. You're looking forward to having 200-300 people here?
Oh yeah. I've been working on cleaning things up and making things look really well, and the guest iris will look fantastic. They're going to put on quite a show because we're going to have them that extra year.
Yeah, because of the pandemic, we had to wait another year, but hopefully everybody will be really excited to be here.
Yeah, I really encourage people to come. It's going to be an awesome. And we finally get to celebrate the 100th year for AIS.
And the 50th year of Mesilla Valley Iris Society.
Oh yes, it's going to be quite a celebration.
Well, thank you so much, Sherry.
So I can't see the rest of the screen. So Gary, you have to let me know whether there's questions or not.
I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay. So what I wanted to say before I go to the next screen is that these videos, the volume is somewhat lower when I share it over the internet than if I'm just watching it on my own computer. So when we get to New Mexico State video, the person I'm talking to, he talks a little bit low. So make sure you have your volume on your computers up so that you can hear everything. So the next garden that we're going to visit on Thursday, April 14th is Calhoun Flower Farm. While we were looking for places to plant our irises, the garden club that I belong to was actually having a tour of the Calhoun Flower Farm, which I didn't know anything about. And it was during tax season, I wasn't able to make it. But another member of our club went there, and I said to them, hey, when you go there, see if they're interested in being a garden for the Iris convention. And what I found out was, number one, the answer was yes. And number two, the grandmother of the girls that run this farm was a person named Nadine Calhoun, was a well-known Irisarian in the area. She passed away a number of years ago. We never knew her, but so we were excited about being here. Scarlet?
Yes, this garden is also in the Mesilla Valley, and the flowers are planted in raised rows. And they also use drip irrigation, which are used to deliver fertilizer. I remember once visiting the garden shortly after the irises were planted, and they had these little like plastic socks all over the leaves. If you can imagine 2 or 3 leaves with the sock over it, and they were spraying for net sedge, which is a weed, and they wanted to make sure the it didn't get on to any of the irises, so they covered up all the leaves with little socks, which took a lot of work. And the interesting thing, it didn't hurt the iris, nor did it hurt the nut sedge. But so there's a little bit of nut sedge there that we've been having to deal with, but it's just a couple of long rows. Howie?
And they were using Roundup, by the way, and not one flower was distorted, so they did a really good job. So we're going to now see the video for Calhoun Flower Farm.
Very interesting business.
We're in Calhoun Flower Farm, one of the 2022 American Iris Society National Convention Gardens. Calhoun Flower Farm is in La Mesa, New Mexico. We have approximately 250 irises planted here, mostly tall beardeds, a couple border beardeds. I'm with Lillian Calhoun of Calhoun Flower Farm. Lillian, can you tell us something about Calhoun Flower Farm?
Absolutely. So we are a family-owned and women-run flower farm here in the Mesilla Valley. We supply cut flowers to the grocery stores and florists in our area, as well as across New Mexico. We also supply flowers direct to consumer with a weekly subscription program, as well as we love to collaborate with other local businesses and craftsmen and women to create products from the flowers and the plants that we grow here, like soaps and bath bombs and other botanical and apothecary products.
How did Calhoun Flower Farm get started?
So our family has been farmers and ranchers for generations, but flowers are pretty new to us. They've come into our lives in the last decade, and that's all thanks to my eldest sister, Emily Calhoun. She did a lot of traveling abroad when she was in college and found out through those adventures that 80% of the flowers sold and used in the US are actually shipped in from other countries and other areas. And so she started the mission for our family to try to be one of the farmers in America that are doing their best in the slow flower movement to flip that percentage so that we get more locally grown flowers to every table here.
And I understand it's strictly a woman-run business, is that correct?
It is, yeah. So I run the business alongside my sister Susanna and my mother Diane. We do also, I gotta shout out to my dad Sam. He is a huge knowledge base and a huge help for us, so he definitely helps us out as well.
And you also sponsor some events where you teach things about flowers, and you also have weddings and things like that too, right?
Yeah, so that's actually kind of the avenue that we got started down, was doing weddings and workshops. And as we've gone down this road, we have found that one of the things that we love most is learning about flowers and all the different forms they can take. And so we love sharing what we've learned in different workshops and things, and supplying locally grown flowers to florists for other weddings or weddings that we do ourselves.
Have you done, during the pandemic, have you done any kind of Zoom presentations on flowers?
So that's always been our goal, but naturally with 2020 being so unpredictable, I mean, that we've done a few things here and there, but we definitely hope to include more virtual workshops and things like that. But we have been able to connect with our customer base and our community through sort of daily walks through the flower farm and taking them along the learning journey with us through our social media.
You also have workshops where you invite members of the general public to help and learn about the flower farm. Is that correct?
We do, yeah. We don't have any booked for this year, naturally, with the pandemic being what it is. We have learned to go with the flow, so we hope to include that in our program sometime very soon. In the meantime, we do invite people to volunteer at the flower farm, and that's where you can have some solo activity or team-based activity based on your comfort level, and help us take care of the beautiful flowers that we're growing here.
We found out about your flower farm through the local garden club, and I thought it would be an ideal location for a national convention garden. When we did that, we found out that your grandmother, Nadine Calhoun, was a well-known Irisarian in the area, and we thought that would be a great fit. Can you talk a little bit about your grandma?
I would love to. Excuse me, it's gonna be difficult without getting a little teary-eyed, so excuse me for that. So my grandmother, Nadine Calhoun, we affectionately, her grandchildren called her Myrrh. She was a phenomenal gardener. She had the greenest thumb, and everyone in the area knew that Nadine Calhoun was such an exceptional flower gardener. She also had a very kind and generous spirit. And irises were actually her true passion. Of all the flowers, irises were her motivation and her passion and what she really prized above all else. And so when we were approached by Howie and the Ayres Society, we decided that we would be a part of this program, and we're so grateful to be a part of it. But we decided we would be a part of it in honor of her.
And we just thank you so much for allowing us to be here, and we certainly will dedicate this garden to the memory of your grandma.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you so much being here today.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, and thank you to the Ayres Society. It's been a real joy to be able to witness the beauty that y'all have created here.
Okay. Any questions?
No questions specific to this garden, no.
Okay. So the next garden, we're going to visit two gardens on Friday, April 15th. And this garden will be the New Mexico State University Fabian Garcia Science Center. When we were originally planning the convention, we had a choice between the Hotel Encanto and a new hotel they're building in town by the Las Cruces Convention Center. That hotel, unfortunately, when they built it, really didn't have enough rooms for a convention of the size that we hope to have. But this was convenient to that, and we thought we would love to have a garden on New Mexico State University property. So through our local cooperative exchange agent, who's a member of our Ayres Society, we were in contact with the university, and he put us in contact with the Plant and Environmental Science Department, and they were happy to give us the space in the Fabian Garcia Science Center. Scarlett?
Yes, in this garden, the irises are also planted in raised rows. The rose was created by the New Mexico State University Ag students, and they also got practice putting in the drip irrigation system. They were happy to do that. And we just used the land there, but we also mixed in a lot of biosolids. And I know this because I transferred all 30 buckets of biosolids over there. And biosolids are free, and it's high in nitrogen and micronutrients, so it really helps to improve the soil. Howie?
Okay, so we're going to interview Ralston St. Hilaire. He's the department head of the Plant and Environmental Science Department, and he does talk a little softly, so please listen carefully.
Welcome to the New Mexico State University Fabian Garcia Science Center. We're at the Ayres Garden at Fabian Garcia. There are approximately 300 irises planted here in this garden. I'm with Ralston St. Hilaire, the department head of the Plant and Environmental Science Department. Ralston, please tell us something about Fabian Garcia and what people can expect to see here.
Well, thank you, Howie. I'm glad we got connected, and we're here at the Fabian Garcia Science Center. Fabian Garcia was one of the first agricultural experiment station directors. And Fabian Garcia Center is one of the 12 campuses or science centers around the state of New Mexico. It is actually one called the near campus. It's very close to campus Ag Science Center. Here at Fabian, there's a lot of research that goes on, and that's our primary focus as a science center. We do have research on ornamental plants, and that's where the irises come in. We do have some woody plant research. We do some research on pecans. We also have chili, chili, and of course onions and some cotton research.
Okay, and you also have things like wine and wine grapes and chili peppers. And talk a little bit about chili peppers, because that's what makes New Mexico famous, and I think people coming from all over the country will be interested in the chili peppers. I assume that the Chili Pepper Institute is involved in developing new varieties and works out of Fabian Garcia. Is that correct?
That is true, Howie, and thanks for mentioning that as well. We do have the chili pepper research going on here. We do have the display gardens, so meaning that you can see a lot of chili peppers that are grown from around the world here on the display gardens. We also have the chili pepper greenhouses, where a lot of the active research goes on. Dr. Dennis Lozada is a chili pepper breeder, and I can tell he's just new, but there's exciting things going on in the chili pepper research program. Also on campus, we do have the Chili Pepper Institute gift shop. So all things chili are displayed there, and they're available for purchase. So those of you who are coming to New Mexico certainly would want to look at our Chili Pepper Institute gift shop and probably take something home from the shop that is chili related.
Yeah, that would be great. It's probably too early to get plants, correct?
Yeah, it will be about too early to get plants, but certainly there's always seeds available in the gift shop.
Yeah,
so you're welcome to think about bringing back some seeds as well.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Ayres Garden. I know we're appreciative of the partnership between New Mexico State and the Mesilla Valley Iris Society, the American Iris Society. You use students to help create this garden. Can you talk a little bit about the student involvement and what they did here?
Correct, yeah. So at the Plant and Environmental Sciences, we're always looking for experiential learning opportunities for our students. And that was one of the examples where our students got actively involved in developing the gardens. So in this case, the students were involved in making sure the area was cleared, they were ensured that the land was prepared, and of course putting in the irrigation system, which for some they don't get to do every day, but they did have hands-on learning experiences in putting in an irrigation system for a garden. So we welcome the opportunity to partner with the Ayres Society, and more importantly, that partnership has provided an experiential learning opportunity for our students.
And you do plan to keep some of the irises for a permanent display here, correct?
We would love to. So we would love to have the irises displayed here as part of the permanent display here at Fabian Garcia Science Center. Hopefully at some point we would probably approach the hybridizers and see if we can do some research related activity with them as well, and that could keep it going in perpetuity. But certainly our students would be interested in maintaining and looking at those wonderful irises that are out there. So that's our long-term plan. We want to keep that as a permanent collection.
Well, I appreciate you coming out here today, Ralston, and we look forward to having the convention here.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I hope you have a very successful convention, Howie. That partnership was certainly rewarding and exciting, and more importantly, provided learning opportunities for our students. So thanks a lot.
Gary?
We have one question about the biosolids. Where do you get that product?
Go ahead,
The
Scarlett.
biosolids are, how should I phrase it politely, human manure. So the waste treatment facility plant in Las Cruces generates it. It's for Las Cruces, I can only say this for Las Cruces, it's a class 1A type of biosolid, so it can be used immediately on like food crops, but other cities probably have different levels and they may have to wait 2 years before they use it on food crops. But I guess you would just have to contact your waste treatment plant in your city and see if you can get any. And it's smelly for maybe a day because it's class 1A, but then it's a musty smell. It doesn't smell like what you think it would. But it's high in iron and micronutrients, but it's also very high in salt. So you don't want to put it on inches deep because you'll burn your plants. You know, you just add a little bit. You heard me. We added 30 buckets, but that was spread out over 7 rows. But it does provide a lot of iron.
Okay.
And it does have nitrogen too, and you know you can't give too much nitrogen to the irises because they'll make them rot. But whatever kind of nitrogen that the biosolids have allow them to grow without rotting, which is great.
Now this garden had a lot of reblooming irises. I think they probably watered it more than the other gardens, but there was irises blooming all summer into the fall. It just was lots and lots of rebloomers.
Okay. There was one comment about the previous garden on nutsedge, and Don and Jenny Spoon says to get rid of nutsedge, you can spray with sedgehammer, and it has never hurt my irises. So just a little note about that from the previous one.
Well, that's a good note because we have a lot of nutsedge there, so we'll have to buy some of that. Okay. So the next garden that we're going to visit on Friday, April 15th is the Farm and Ranch Museum. The Farm and Ranch Museum is a state museum. It's got a lot of historic farm equipment as well as a lot of different kinds of animals, cattle, etc. This was a garden that was long on my list of places to have an iris planting, and it was actually the last garden of the 6 that we got permission to plant. I was working with the Las Cruces Convention and Visitors Bureau, and through them, they contacted the Farm and Ranch Museum, and they were thrilled with the idea of us using these raised beds that nothing was in to beautify their garden as long as we did all the work and paid to put the new soil in. So we did that. Scarlet?
Yes, we pulled out the soil right next to the edge of the bed. We moved like 2 feet of it and sort of threw it in the center. And then we spent about $600 on quality soil that we also mixed in some biosolids, and then we placed the soil there. We installed a drip irrigation system where fertilizer is delivered. Unfortunately, we had originally planned to put 2 rows of irises here, but the drip irrigation system we installed could only handle 1 row. So a couple of days after planting, we removed the inner row and moved them over to Fabian Garcia garden. So when you go to Fabian Garcia, you'll see that some of the irises are no longer in order by hybridizer and by name, and that's because we had to move some of the irises out of this bed into that bed on the ends. You know, I was looking at this garden earlier, and there were people coming in on buses. You know, they're on tour buses, and they were stopping to admire the irises. Howie?
And people will not only get to see the iris garden, but you'll have admission to the museum. So we'll spend enough time here that you can see all the exhibits and enjoy what the museum has to offer. This is a real Southwestern experience. So I interviewed Craig Massey of the museum. That'll be next.
I'm with Craig Massey of the Farm and Ranch Museum. I'm going to ask Craig to speak a little bit about the Farm and Ranch Museum. We will be visiting the museum as well as the Ayres Gardens. Craig, could you tell us a little bit about, first of all, the history of the museum? Let's start there.
Okay. This museum was being talked about in the 1970s, and it was a plan that took about 20 years of grassroots efforts and eventually got to the political level. And the museum was built in 1996 and 1997, and it opened to the public in 1998. And it's on 47 acres. It's part of the New Mexico Department of Cultural Affairs. It's a big sprawling place with a lot of activity. We have animals, we have demonstrations, exhibits, galleries, greenhouse, gift shop, and there's a lot of things happening here.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit what people will see here besides the Ayres Gardens?
Yes, one of the big things we have here are the animals. We have 7 different breeds of beef cattle. And we also have horses, ponies, and sheep. We have 2 breeds of sheep. They both have a really strong connection to New Mexico, the Dipole and the Navajo Churro. So people really enjoy that. We have an art gallery, 2 art galleries right now, and they change periodically. We have temporary exhibits and we have long-term exhibits, indoor exhibits, outdoor exhibits. So a little bit of everything.
Can you talk a little bit about the history of the farming and ranch community and what people will see here specifically related to that?
New Mexico's agricultural history is very unique, I think, mainly because it's so old. There were people growing food here 4,000 years ago. So this is a really long story, and it's a great story that we enjoy telling. And then you have the different cultures that contributed to this agriculture. You had the Spanish that came in the late 1500s, early 1600s that brought, different grains, different animals, livestock, grapes for wine, all these different things. So they melded with the native people that were here and had their traditions. And then later you have other cultures coming in that are contributing as well. So it's a really interesting mix of cultures and a diversity and a very much a variety of crops. New Mexico is very diverse in the things they grow.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the exhibits you'll see inside the museum?
Yes, we have one up now called Home on the Range, From Ranches to Rockets. And it's a uniquely New Mexico story that talks about the transition from what is now White Sands Missile Range, from ranch land to an Army missile range. So during the 1940s, that was a dramatic transformation. So we have an exhibit that tells that story. We talk about the early agriculture in our main gallery, the different techniques, the different cultures again. We talk about the Spanish colonial period. We have a Spanish colonial home built inside the gallery. Again, we have art show in there, and we have several exhibits where you can immerse yourself in history, where you're not just looking at something hanging on a wall. You walk through a room or through a building. So it's a really neat history immersion experience.
You also have some farm equipment in there, correct?
Yes, we have a lot of farm equipment. We have it inside of our galleries, and also we have a lot of antique farm equipment outside that people can meander through and look and enjoy and study.
So let's just talk a little bit about the irises. Can you explain a little bit about the partnership with the Mesilla Valley Iris Society and the American Iris Society?
Yes, I believe you all approached the Visit Las Cruces people, the Convention Visitors Bureau, and we were really grateful to be asked to participate. We have these raised beds out here in front of our museum that needed a different look, I think, and to have you all come out and put the work in that you did, the Mesilla Valley Iris Society, and to bring something this beautiful to our place, we're very grateful. I think it's been a great partnership. Of course, the past year with the pandemic has been a challenge for all of us because, the museum was closed for quite a while. but we're grateful to be back, and I think it's been great, and we look forward to having everyone here.
Gary?
Just one comment from Jean Richter. She says, I love the bird song in the background of these videos.
Better than the noise from I-10, that's for certain.
Yeah, the last one, the New Mexico State University, it's fairly close to the freeway, so. Okay, so we'll be visiting two gardens on Saturday, the 16th. They're both gardens on the Saturday are member gardens. Blue Jay, of course, she's a member of the Ayres Society, but she also has a commercial garden, so I don't consider that a member garden the same way as these. The first one that we'll be visiting is Cynthia and Wes Wilson's Ayres and Spirus garden in Las Cruces' North Valley. They have 900 irises of their own, which include about 150 different varieties of arrowbreds. There's about 600 irises of mine, the Cacho Mountain Iris, that's planted in one part of the garden, as well as the 200 convention irises that are here. Scarlet?
Yes, the Wilson's Garden, as I said, it's also in the Mesilla Valley. And what does that mean? That means Mesilla Valley was formed by the Rio Grande as it, meandered throughout the millennia. It changed its path now and then, and it brought in a lot of soil from upriver, from Santa Fe, from Colorado. So the soil in the Mesilla Valley can be either clay-like or maybe a little bit sandy from the alluvial runoff from the Oregon Mountains to the east. Now, the Wilsons add gypsum to their clay-like soil to help improve the texture of the soil. And they also grow irises in raised beds, but they do flood irrigation of their irises because they found that the emitters on the drip irrigation would clog up because they have hard water. They've improved the soil by adding horse manure to it, and they've also added alfalfa pellets to it. And also the soil has some pecan shells. I mean, this is a pecan farm, and they were able to buy like a truckload of pecan shells, which that you use as mulch. And mulch in this area is actually very good because it helps shade the soil. Howie?
And one of the things about the way we plant irises in New Mexico is we actually bury the rhizomes by about a ½ inch of soil, which is pretty much a no-no in the rest of the country where they get a lot of rain, so they don't bake in the sun. Now, this garden belongs, like I say, to Wes and Cynthia Wilson. Cynthia Wilson is the president of the Mesilla Valley Ayres Society, and I interviewed Cynthia for the video here.
And you can see this is on a pecan farm.
Oh, yeah. We're in the Wilsons' Ayres and Spirus garden of Cynthia and Wes Wilson. The Wilsons have by far the largest collection of irises in the area. They have about 900 of their own irises. There's 200 convention irises, and also the Picacho Mountain Iris planting of my business is in this garden. Cynthia is president of the Mesilla Valley Ayres Society, which is the host society for the 2022 Ayres Convention. Cynthia, I'd like to ask you, you have so many irises here. When did you start growing irises, and how did you get involved with irises?
Well, Wes and I moved to Las Cruces in 2006, and actually we brought iris with us. They didn't have names. We had got them. We assumed they had come from Long's Garden in Colorado, but Wes had picked up a bunch from a young couple who had inherited a yard full of iris, and they had young children, and they wanted to have a space for the children, so they advertised free iris and or to trade. And so Wes said, I have a bunch of raspberry plants. Would you be interested? So they took the raspberry plants and he took iris. And it wasn't until we moved to Las Cruces, and actually Wes was the first to step out, went to a show in about 2007, and I was visiting grandchildren, and he called and said, guess what? I signed us up for the Mesilla Valley Iris Society. So with that came a lot of education about hybridizers and learning to how to grow the iris really well, the fertilizing of them. And we got to know some hybridizers, and at that time we ordered first from Sutton. And actually, I have to put a little plug in here for Gail James. She's the one that encouraged Wes to sign up for the club. And then, as I say, we got educated that they needed names. They had to be labeled. And if we wanted to participate in the Iris show, they had to have these names and basically know the hybridizer. And then we got to George Sutton and his son Michael Sutton, and then to Keith Keppel and Blythe, Barry Blythe. So all through the garden there are many hybridizers. Jenny Spoon, we really enjoy the friendship with Jenny. Robin Shadlow, who's another hybridizer who's across the street from Keith Keppel. And so the garden just kept growing because truthfully we never saw an iris we didn't like. So with all of these hybridizers available to us, and then when Howie said, oh, he might like to start, and would we make our iris available to him to use? And we said sure. So Howie came on board, and he has grown his section here quite a bit. So it's very easy to get to 900 iris and more.
And it's interesting you brought up joining the Mesilla Valley Iris Society. And besides celebrating the 100th anniversary of the American Iris Society, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Mesilla Valley Iris. Could you talk a little bit about, as president of the Mesilla Valley Iris Society, a little bit about, just briefly about the Mesilla Valley Iris Society and its history?
Yes. Well, it was around Christmas time when it dawned on me and Wes about the same time. Oh my goodness, 2021 is coming. The club was formed in 1971. We're celebrating 50 years. How exciting. So when I sent the Christmas letter out to everyone, we incorporated that into the notice that everybody could understand that, wow, you're a part of something that is 50 years old. And we have had many iris from the 70s, not even realizing that that was a crucial point in the life of the Mesilla Valley Iris Society being formed in that year.
Today we're looking at your beautiful plantings. You're one of the 2 member gardens that are part of the convention. And I also wanted to make a plug for the fact that in 2018 we hosted the Arrow Trek here. And can you just talk a little bit about your collection of arrowbreds? You probably have one of the biggest collections there is.
We got the greatest compliment from Perry Dyer when he was here for that Arrow Society convention. He said that Wes and I had the finest collection of arrowbreds and displayed so well of any that he had ever seen. And so you can imagine we were bursting at the seams with that. And It was just a great honor to be able to do that Errol convention. It was a lot of work, but in the end, all the compliments, and I really felt that people would be back to see the garden once Perry made his comment. And so we're excited that the convention is going to be held here in 2022, that more people can see that New Mexico has a lot to offer, and iris grow really well in New Mexico.
Gary, any questions?
There's one question. What plant zone is Las Cruces in, and what is the average high temperature during the summer?
The zone is 8. I think it's 8A, I believe. And the average high temperature is probably about 95 degrees. Now, month of June is our hottest month. On a normal year, we have 7 days over 100 degrees. Last year, we had 40. We probably had 3 or 4 already this year. So it is getting hotter here.
Yeah, I think where I'm at, I think it's 7B. It's I'm a little higher than the valley. But yeah, it's upper 90s.
Our winter nights are generally in the low 30s. We probably have maybe 20 nights that are in the 20s and a couple that are in the high teens because we are at 4,000 feet elevation. So it can be 20 degrees at night, and then it could be 55, 60 during the daytime.
Okay.
Okay, so the last garden on the tour is Scarlet's garden. Scarlet is the second member garden and also was one of the gardens on the Aerial Trek. So before I play the video, Scarlet, you have anything to say about your own garden?
Yeah, I have about 200 convention plantings and then about 500 irises of my own, my personal irises, ranging from, SDBs to Spuria. So I have quite a selection. In this interview, there is no interview. I was out of town when Howie was doing the interviews. So I had my gardening buddy, Bo, present the garden. Howie?
Okay, so we're going to see Scarlet's garden. And one of the things Scarlet does is you'll probably see all around her garden is the garden art. She'll be selling her garden art during the convention. So there's a lot of beautiful stuff.
Yeah. I think Bo did a good job presenting the garden. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to my garden created by Scarlet Ayres, who is convention co-chair. This garden is the only garden not in the Mesilla Valley and is located instead on the East Mesa. The garden blooms about a week behind the Mesilla Valley gardens. This means that arrowbreds and medians may still be in bloom, depending upon the winter, during the convention next year. If we had the convention this spring like we originally had planned to, pre-COVID-19, the STBs and ABs would have been in full glory due to an excessively cold winter, as you can see here in these videos dated April 9th and 10th. Only about half the convention irises in this garden are tall beardeds. The rest are medians, arrowbreds, and Louisianas. This garden was part of the Aerial Trek in 2018, and she still has quite a few arrowbreds from the Aerial Trek. The soil on the East Mesa consists of the alluvial runoff from the Oregon Mountains to the east and is very poor in organic matter, less than 0.5%, but it drains very well. The soil is sandy loam and is 80% or more sand. The soil was improved by doing trench composting. The grass was dug out and dead leaves, grass clippings, and kitchen scraps were added. Biosolids and horse manure was also mixed in. BR61 is the fertilizer of choice and is added 1 month before blooming, 1 month after blooming, and in September. This garden is the only garden on the tour under water restrictions, but she tries and waters every 5 to 7 days during the summertime. The soil is alkaline, the water is alkaline, so it's an alkaline environment. And Iris is like slightly acidic soil, but it tolerates the alkaline conditions very well. Scarlet is former president of the local club, webmaster for Region 23, and former RVP. She's also on the AIS board. She first purchased some irises at the Mesilla Valley Iris Society annual sale about 25 years ago. In 2001, she realized that you could purchase irises over the internet and started to fill up the garden with irises. After trying but failing to find the MVI's club on the web, she contacted the RVP of New Mexico and managed to make contact and join NVIS. She established a web presence for all the clubs of Region 23 so people can easily join local New Mexico clubs. Scarlet maintains the database and database pictures for NVIS. Scarlet also creates a lot of garden art for her house. On display are the gardening angels and glass flowers made out of recycled glassware. The flowers provide color all year long. Look at these MTBs. The convention beds curve around the backyard to take advantage of sun and shade. Our sunlight is quite intense and afternoon shade is beneficial. The beds are organized with the medians getting the best shade and the tall bearded and arrowbreds getting more sunlight. After that, the beds are organized by hybridizer's last name. She retired from the White Sands Missile Range in 2019, where she did analysis, software coding, and developing databases. This came in useful developing the database for the 2022 National Convention and the software to communicate with contributing hybridizers. White Sands Missile Range is the largest and most heavily instrumented missile range in the world, and there is a nice missile park on post near the gate that you can visit. A cold winter made the garden bloom late this year. Follow me, there is more to see. Here is a tall bearded garden on April 28th. New Mexico didn't receive the massive freeze like Texas, but the blooms were still 1 to 2 weeks later than usual. However, it didn't seem to affect the quality of the blooms, and the tall beardeds appeared unusually tall. You might be surprised to see Louisiana irises growing in the convention garden plantings. How can swamp irises grow in the desert Southwest? Louisiana irises are grown here in buckets using quality soil like Miracle-Gro. Scarlet lightly fertilizes every month with BR61 and follows the Hooker-Nichols plans on growing irises in buckets. Additionally, she has over 500 irises of her own. Many are arrowbreds and SDBs. She has bled for rebloomers and a bed for novelty irises. There are also spurias in this garden, but they bloom in May. This garden has been a work in progress for 31 years and also include daylilies, dahlias, alliums, as well as some vegetables and herbs. This concludes my tour of my garden. Won't you come to visit my garden in 2022?
Hey, any questions for Scarlett on her garden?
No, not yet.
Okay, so we wanted to thank everybody that helped us prepare the gardens and helped us in every other way. So we just have a little credit video at the end, which I'm going to play. And that's our program. We hope to see everybody in Las Cruces next spring.
Thank you, Howie. One question I have is you mentioned the temperatures in the summer and June and there. What about the temperatures during the convention and in April?
70s and 80s.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I expect blue skies, expect a little wind, wear sunscreen. It'll be dry weather, won't be rainy, so wear a hat. So it should be comfortable as long as the winds stay down. That's the only thing we're usually worried about in April is possibility of high winds. Also, we did ask if people were interested in a wine tasting event at the convention next year. So you can taste New Mexico wines. would there be of interest? If you can, respond on the chat, yes or no. It'd probably be for a fee, but we could set something up to taste New Mexico wines. One of our club members actually, I believe he teaches winemaking, doesn't he, Howie?
Yes, Dale Ellis, who was the photographer of some of the videos, he actually is a winemaker himself, though, a backyard winemaker, and he also teaches at the university.
Okay. There's a question about, hang on a second, let me, will there be a silent auction and boutique?
So there's definitely going to be a boutique. Silent auction, it depends on whether we can get enough volunteers to help us with that. And Scarlett, I guess, will probably sell some of her garden art. I'm going to pot up irises. Steve Kelly, who's another local hybridizer, is going to pot up irises. So, and I think, Scarlett, do you know if the place in Hondo Iris Farm, if they still have stuff that they wanted to provide for the boutique?
Yeah, the last I spoke to them, I think they were going to provide jewelry. She makes, I think she made these earrings.
We're hoping to have a silent auction. At the moment, the American Iris Society has no silent auction chair. So we need to talk around our region to see if there's volunteers to, basically sit in the room during the hours that the silent auction is open. We would like to have one, but we haven't made a commitment to it yet.
Okay. There's a question, I think it's directed to Scarlett probably. Tell me more about the fertilizer program you use for irises. And then someone else said, what is VR61 fertilizer made of?
It's BR61. It's with a B, not a V. BR61. It's actually high in the middle number. It's something like 958 7. It's very, very high in the middle number. I was talking with Sherry about it, and she says it makes her irises bloom sometimes too much and they bloom out. So she doesn't use that, but the club uses it. We buy it in bulk. We buy it like by the 40-pound bag, and then we sell it to the club members. And I fertilize a month before blooming and in the fall. And I wasn't able to get around to the month after blooming like I usually do for the rebloomers. But it's just I apply it through a how should I phrase it, through the sprinkler. I'm the only one who doesn't have an irrigation system. I just do overhead sprinkling. So I put in one of those ortho containers, put a little bit of half a cup of BR61 in that. And then when I water it, when I run the sprinkler, it fertilizes the garden. I also do trench composting. As I said, the garden is very poor in organic matter. And I find that after doing trench composting, about 2 years later, the irises go to town. They really, really enjoy the organic matter added to the soil. And it's hard to do organic composting here because it's so dry. But if you bury it in the soil, you don't have to turn it. You just bury it, put the soil on top, and then you can put the irises on top of that. And as I said, it seems to work real well for me. And then I add a little bit of the biosolid, not a lot because it is salty. So that's how I fertilize. But everybody does their own thing. I added horse manure too in places, and because as I said, the soil is so darn sandy where I live.
Okay. I think I saw about 12 responses to the question about would you like a wine tasting? And from what I saw, I think there was 11 yes and 1 no.
Oh, okay.
And of course, I wanted to say, Scarlett, you were referring to an optional tour before the convention, correct?
Yeah, we were still debating whether to set it up to go to Old Mesilla, because that is a very historic place to visit. As I said, Billy the Kid was tried there. The Butterfield Stagecoach is now a restaurant. So it's a very historic area, and it used to be the capital of this area. And then the train bypassed Old Mesilla and went into Las Cruces. So it just became a pleasant community. Other possibilities could be taking a tour of the missile range. We can possibly set that up with a bus,
Nice.
or even going to Spaceport America, which is north of town, which is going to launch tourism to space fairly soon, I think.
So the schedule is not finalized, and of course the co-chairs are working hard and making sure the schedule is full, and it will be made available as soon as possible, as well as the registration form and all of that, and I'm sure our website. So there will be more information coming up, and in the next few months, and of course. It all depends also on what regulations the state or the city has at that time and all that. But we're hoping by next year that everything will be back to regular, I guess, or at least a hybrid version of it. Howie, anything else about the convention that you'd like to?
Well, we tentatively have it scheduled from the 11th through the 16th now. The 11th would just be a board meeting if we need the nighttime board meeting. Otherwise, we'll start on the next day, on the Tuesday, the 12th.
This is April, right?
We're talking April of next year, correct? And I did in this last week talk to the hotel. We're working on the banquet menus. We've been in contact with the bus company. Everything's been kind of in abeyance just because of COVID, and the hospitality industry is just really struggling. So we're hopeful that by the end of July, sometime in August, we can have the registration form out.
Okay, well, unless there are more questions, this whole program is going to be on YouTube as well, so you can see it again in more detail if you missed something. And so we wanted to thank Howie and Scarlett. Thank you so much. That was very interesting. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of irises. There are irises everywhere, and they look really, really nice, tall, blooming, great colors, and so thank you for showing us those gardens. They're beautiful. And with that, I think unless there's any more questions, Gary, do you have any more questions?
Well, I think I saw a question back a few pages about the JT test, but this is not a judge's training program, so there is no JT hours for this, and no.
We should have a JT on wine testing. That will be very popular, I think, with our judges. Our judges love wine, and testing even more. So
we will have judges trainings at the convention,
right?
And we'll probably have an in-garden training, but we need to set that up with Bonnie.
And question, Scarlett, who is your kitty?
Oh, the kitty is Bo.
That's Bo. That's
Bo. That's Bo. That's my gardening buddy. Yeah. He appeared in like half the videos.
At least he doesn't dig your irises, Scarlett. I had a cat in New York that I would plant the irises and he would dig them up.
Yeah, he's still a kitten. He's not a full adult yet. He's still a kitten.
Yeah,
but I see one question. I think the wines would be from around southern New Mexico.
Yeah. Okay.
So we actually have two wineries, and the wineries are either south of Las Cruces or in Deming, New Mexico. But there's what was St. Clair Winery. It's now called Les Combs. They have a restaurant in Mesilla, and the other one is Luna Rosa. So it's interesting. One of the proprietors is from Italy, and the other one's from France. So we have two different varieties.
That's great competition for us.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. Definitely, with their background.
The Italian one has a pizzeria in Mesilla that
Wow.
has wine.
So, so the hotel will have the same rates available a couple of days in advance, and then a couple of days later, as usual.
That's correct. So I did speak to the hotel, and they are going to give us a direct link to their website where we can put that on the web page so people can register. And they're also going to give us a code. So if you prefer to call up the hotel, you can use the code to say that you're registering for the American Iris Society. Now, the hotel rates for before the convention and after the convention, they do promise them, but that of course is based upon availability.
Okay.
And we're also planning a dine around on the restaurants in Old Mesilla on the Friday night. And
Okay.
so, you know, La Posta, which is at the Butterfield Stagecoach, maybe the Double Eagle, which actually one of our members' husbands owns. So we're looking into that.
And the winery. The
Yeah,
winery.
we did that in Des Moines, if you remember, those of you who were there. That was very popular as well. Yeah. People
You had
like
to walk. You had to walk there. Unfortunately, without the shuttle, we're going to either have to carpool or Uber to get over there.
Okay.
There's a comment says, please get from Debbie Strauss says, please get Cynthia to bag up some of those awesome New Mexico pecans. And from Del Perry says, for the adventurous who might like to come early or stay late, the campgrounds just outside Las Cruces are really nice and in a beautiful place.
It's a place called the Geary Springs. It's on the east side of the Oregon Mountains, and it's spectacular. You're basically, I think Geary Springs is around 6,900 feet, and the Oregon Mountains are up to 9,000 feet, and you're just below the Oregon Mountains, and it's part of the Oregon Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument.
And somebody had mentioned that EVIS was going to supply a quilt for, I don't know if it was for the boutique or silent auction or what. But
They're
anyway,
making a quilt. They're hand making a quilt.
and so someone, Laura says, what is EVIS and the quilt? And it looks like we got an answer already. EVIS is the Irish Society in Rio Rancho. We are creating a quilt.
Oh, good.
It's
Okay,
the Enchanted Vista Iris Society.
Enchanted Vista, yeah.
And let me say something to all the New Mexicans there. We do need items for the boutique. So I know some of you have artist friends. Ask them if they're willing to sell at the boutique. I think we would get 20% and they would get the rest. Of course, we couldn't be responsible for theft or damage, but I know a lot of New Mexicans have a lot of artistic friends who may want to sell at the boutique.
But you accept anyone really from other states as well, right? I mean, for the boutique.
Yeah. If they want to bring the stuff and set them up, that's fine. Or I guess you could always mail it to us and we could set it up.
So if you have anything to sell, any crafts or anything that you contact Howie and Scarlett directly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we hope to see many of you in New Mexico next year, and the rest of you, we'll see you in July for the continuation of the webinar series.